Well, the government is looking to turn the public eye away from Cummings as quickly as possible. But the Prime Minister's approval ratings have already taken a hit. A new survey indicates that his approval has dropped 20% since the scandal broke out. Well, YouGov pollster Chris Curtis joins us now from London for more on some of the public reaction we've been seeing. Well, hello there to you. Many thanks for joining us on the programme. We were just talking about this survey, a hit of 20% for Boris Johnson, falling into minus territory. Now, this was a poll by the Savanta Group, but I guess my question to you is, how can you actually drop into minus territory for a start? And will this have lasting damage for the Prime Minister and his government?
So I think what people are saying when they talk about negative territory is what we call net approval. That is, you take the number of people who say they approve of what Boris Johnson's doing, and you take away the number of people who say they disapprove. Now, for most of this crisis, the government and the Prime Minister himself has stayed in positive territory, which is actually fairly rare for a politician. That's to say, more people like what they're doing than dislike. What this scandal has done is it's moved the Prime Minister and indeed the government back into negative territory. So that is no longer true. Now, is this worrying for them? As you say, it depends whether this is a short-term impact or a long-term impact. But what we can say at this stage is that this isn't a sort of media bubble story that's going to just go away. This is something that has cut through with the public. And I think that's very worrying indeed if you're currently in Downing Street.
Well, absolutely. We were just quoting, Tig was just quoting a YouGov poll, 58% of people wanting Dominic Cummings to resign. But given how this has kind of grown in terms of public outrage, would his resignation actually be enough, in your opinion, to draw a line under this scandal?
I think it would do. I mean, the government would still be damaged. And I think it was a fair point made just there that maybe a lot of the damage has already been done. And therefore, getting rid of him now wouldn't help too much. But I think what this will come down to is not actually public opinion at the end of the day, but opinion of Conservative MPs. Now, there's a lot of Conservative MPs who were elected in the recent general election in December. Many of them don't have particularly big majorities. Many of them won in seats where Conservatives have really struggled to win for over a century. Now, what they'll be thinking about is, yeah, it's a few years until the next general election, but I need everything to make sure I can hold on to this seat. And my God, stories like this running for weeks really isn't going to help.
OK, so then from there, what about Boris Johnson? Would you say that Boris Johnson's loss is therefore Keir Starmer, the opposition leader's gain?
Well, this comes at a time when the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, his approval ratings were declining anyway, and Boris Johnson's, the Prime Minister's, the Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition's approval numbers were already on the way up, whilst the Prime Minister's were already on the way down. Now, we're going to have to wait to see in the coming days what impact that has, but I think it's very likely that we will see Keir Starmer's numbers continuing to improve, and potentially him even ending up as a situation where he's more popular than the sitting Prime Minister. And that's not something that we've seen in quite some time here. The Conservative leader has been more popular than the opposition leader for most of the past decade.
And then if we take a look at the wider picture of this, because Boris Johnson did come under fire, didn't he, for bringing England out of lockdown before Northern Ireland, before Wales and before Scotland. So had this backlash against him already begun in some respects in terms of the British public before this scandal actually broke?
I think that's completely true. Before this scandal broke, we were already seeing the government numbers starting to decline. And the main reason for that was that the public sort of didn't really want to start easing lockdown restrictions. They were worried about the health consequences, and they were worried that this was happening too soon. Now, on that backdrop, you obviously have this weekend of awful headlines for the government and a bad news story, which I think even they would accept that they haven't handled particularly well. Now, in that situation, it's obvious that, the Conservatives are going to look at the polling numbers in the coming weeks and they're going to wince a bit and not be too happy, which is a new phenomenon for them because they've been having great polling for months now.
OK, well, Chris Curtis, great to have your analysis on the programme. Thanks so much for joining us.